Hi everyone, I'm Sri Lakshmi Wenda, your host for today's Fall into AI session, and I will help facilitate take attendance and collect questions for this session here. This event is Creative Thinking with presented by Jena Marble. Jena Marble is a clinical assistant professor of graphic design and Siebel Center for Design affiliate. Her research focuses on generative artificial intelligence and graphic design, exploring how Gen AI can reshape creative processes and influence the future of the design industry. Named one of the GDUSA's 2025 People to Watch, her design practice is informed by experience across industry, academia, and government. Thank you for attending. I hope you enjoy.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone for coming. I'm so happy to be here. I hope that everyone can see my screen. A few things to get started with before I get into it. If you are in the room and you aren't in chat on Zoom, there is this URL. It's tinyurl.com/CITL workshop. This will take you to the Miro board. This is the Miro board that you need to follow along with this workshop. If you are on Zoom, Ava has put in the chat the link. So you should see it there. So for those of you just joining, here's a Miro link. This is what you're going to need to follow along. You should not need to sign up. If you already have an account, great. Miro is an amazing resource. I definitely recommend you use it. But you should not have to sign up. You should just be able to edit it, no problem. And then, of course, you also need Adobe Firefly. When you signed up for this, there was messaging about you need to sign up for this account, for the subscription if you don't already have a license. So hopefully you did that. If not, probably get like 10 credits that you can use. But if you have an active license to the university, you'll get a lot more credits. So let us know in the chat if you have any questions about that. But this URL or the link that Ava shared in the chat will get you to this Miro board that you need. So without any, further hesitation, let's get started. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. Then I also want to talk about why we're using Firefly specifically. So thank you for joining us. My name is Jena Marble. I'm a clinical assistant professor of graphic design, affiliate of Siebel. I also have an active design practice. Since I'm clinical, that kind of means, I'm industry facing. I do a lot of work with Adobe as well. I'm pretty active in their creative career server. I do a lot of work using generative AI tools. And, I'm really excited to prepare our students for the workforce that they're going into. And I think AI can be a really powerful tool when we use it strategically. A little more table setting before we get started. If you're here on Miro, and hopefully those of you in the room, give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down, maybe if you cannot see my board. I just want to quickly classify what it is that we're talking about today when we talk about AI, because AI is kind of an umbrella term now. So there's different types of AI, classification AI, predictive AI, things like your email, filtering out spam messages, or Amazon suggesting what you should buy, or Spotify saying, here's what you should listen to. That's not what we're talking about today. Today, we're talking about generative AI. That is an AI model that creates new content based on the data it's trained on. And examples of those, ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, when we're thinking about large language models or hybrid models, and then Adobe Firefly specifically is what we're using today, which is primarily a text to image generator. So if you're not familiar with Adobe Firefly, the reason I like to use it not only in my classrooms, but in my own professional practice when I'm using it to brainstorm and think about conceptualizing different ideas is, number one, we get it with our Creative Cloud license. And that's great because some other tools you have to pay for. But with our license that we get as faculty and staff through the university, Firefly is part of that. And so you don't have to pay additional for that. Great. That's number one. But number two, Firefly and Adobe, they're pretty transparent, at least comparatively, about the data that they're training on. So I linked to this specifically, and there are other websites that you can find about what it is that Adobe is training on and what they say and how transparent they are about it. And you could see here that they say our current generative AI models were trained on licensed content like Adobe stock, which creators gave their rights up as soon as they put that work onto Adobe stock. So that's belongs to Adobe, and then public domain content. And then I like that they say as Adobe or as Firefly evolves, Adobe is exploring ways for creators to be able to train their own assets. So I like that Adobe is pretty transparent about how the model is training. And when you look at some other large language models specifically, that is not clear. So I just kind of wanted to set that table, why we're using Firefly specifically. Okay, I'm going to unhide this, and I want to talk about just briefly how I've used Firefly and generative AI in my classroom. So we're here on this board now. You look over here, you see my pointer? Okay, so this is where we're at. I have loved using AI in my classroom, and I will clarify that to say that I use generative AI in my advanced courses. In our foundational courses, we are not using AI. We want our students to have that foundational knowledge with analog, hands-on learning, kind of really getting in there with Adobe tools. That all happens the same way it always has without AI. But once they get to some of those advanced courses, we are using AI to think and conceptualize in new ways. And one of the things that AI is really good at is visualizing the unknown. I just want to briefly show you one of the projects from an advanced course I taught last year, where our students had to visualize imaginary cities. Think El Dorado, Troy, Atlantis, all these places that exist but don't have traditional reference imagery. So Firefly was really good at bringing some of that to life. And so no matter what we do, our students begin with research, and you can see here some of the research that our students engaged in. The students specifically had Troy, and then based on that research they did, then they could go into Firefly and start visualizing the city. What does it look like? They knew that Troy was surrounded by walls. Those were kind of symbols of strength and resilience. And that's what that student brought into some of their other design work. So that's just to kind of preface it to say that's what we're going to be doing today. I know it's also a little tricky teaching these workshops because I usually am talking to a room full of graphic designers, so I know my audience really well. I'm also a graphic designer. In settings like this, we come from a lot of different places, staff, faculty, research, teaching. We have a lot of different needs. So I'm trying to kind of encompass all of that and give you a brief overview of how you might use these tools in your own practice in whatever way that shows up. So let's go over here. We're going to start doing some of our exploration. If you come over here to this board with this beautiful image, just a nice little mock-up right here. As designers, I'm a graphic designer. In our practice, again, we can use generative AI to explain ideas visually. So this is an article. You don't have to look at it now, but Creative Boom is a great resource for designers. And they actually asked agencies how they're using AI. A lot of really great practical uses of AI in industry. And so I liked this quote that said, it's all about communicating intangible ideas in our heads. So AI tools like Midjourney, which is an image generator, have streamlined the ideation process and brought creative ideas to life. So from things like holding a mobile phone to brutalist architecture or Troy, Atlantis, El Dorado, we can bring these things to life. And that makes these ideas seem more realistic. So this is the first question. Here's what I'm going to ask you. And I would love if you grabbed a sticky. And if I need to have more, here, maybe I'll just quickly add some more. Just grab a sticky. And then I want you to answer these questions. Are there any things that you have trouble visualizing? So maybe that's related to your research or your teaching practice, or if you're on a marketing team, or it could be anything, maybe even like your day-to-day life. Maybe I have trouble visualizing. I don't know. My son talks to me all the time about dreams he has. Maybe I want to help visualize that. It could be anything. Are there any things that you have trouble visualizing? And then I want you to write that. So here were a few examples I thought of in research. Maybe there are frameworks, relationships, models. Maybe it's an idea. What do you think? What are some things that you are you have challenges when you're trying to visualize them? And you can just grab a sticky. You can keep it here, but I would love if you put your name on there too, so we could talk about that. And I'll give maybe a minute or so because I know this is kind of a big question, and it might require a little reflection. This is good, a graphic syllabus for different disciplines. One of the things I got when I started teaching was adding some of those kind of engaging elements to my syllabus on the homepage, on the, not homepage, on the first page, kind of related to what I was teaching or what the course was about. So that's interesting. Is there graphics that we could put on our syllabi for different disciplines? What else? Ava said dreams, emotion, internal states of the mind and characters. I love that. Really interesting. I see some stickies that have floated down here. If anyone else has something that, you want to say out loud or share in the chat, I know this is kind of a big question. Think about your research, your teaching, any challenges you're currently facing. And then we're going to try to use Adobe to help us visualize, conceptualize, bring to life some of these ideas. All right, maybe this is something we need to reflect on a little bit longer. I know it's kind of a heady question. It's asking you to think about what you have trouble visualizing, but maybe you haven't visualized it yet because you're having trouble thinking of it. All right, let's go over to this board, and I'm going to give you a more direct prompt. So I'm going to unlock this. I'm actually going to put this text in the chat. And now, let's see, there is a chat. Feel free to pop something in the chat if you prefer. Thank you, Eva. In the chat on Zoom, I just put this text in here because now I actually want us to go into Firefly and I want us to start visualizing some of these things. So look, social determinants of health. I love that. What does that look like? There is so much nuance that could go into that answer. And it's a big concept to try to think about. And Firefly might help us start thinking through some of that. Or you might look at it and say, no, this is completely wrong. Sometimes knowing what you don't like is just as important as knowing what you do like. So now we're over here. So do you see this exercise where it says, let's go to Firefly together? So let's go. Firefly is browser-based. It's just firefly.adobe.com. And also put that into the chat. And you are going to want to make sure that you are signed in. So do you see here? I've got kind of this funky icon right here. I'm signed in with my Illinois account. I have my subscription is active. Hopefully your subscription is active as well. If it's not, just watch or use probably the 10 or so credits that you have. But we have about 1,000 credits, and they last pretty long, I would say. So just make sure you're signed in. That's number one. And then you can kind of explore all the different things that Adobe does, text to video. If you are on an enterprise account with Adobe, you can actually train it on your own brand imagery. So you could kind of create assets that are on brand. We're not going to do that today. But what we are going to do is we're just going to go here. Do you see here where we're in text to image? We know that we're going to generate an image because it says image right here. That's what we want. And if you were in the chat, you have this text right here, a visual metaphor for community resilience in urban neighborhoods. That's the prompt we're going to use. if you are in the room, you know, there it is, a visual metaphor for community resilience in urban neighborhoods. Don't add, don't do anything else, just use that as your prompt. If anyone wants me to stop, tell me to stop or ask the question in the chat, but hopefully we're all here. So I'm going to go ahead and press generate. And then you can see here, this takes you to the screen where it's actually thinking. And this is where you're going to see those images pop up. Okay, this is fascinating. So you can see here, this is just kind of like the default. All of these settings over here, we can go in there and tinker with those in a second. But this image was the default that Firefly gave me. So it's a photo, right? Let me look through some of these. If you want to look at it bigger, all you have to do is just click. Fascinating. So I'm seeing here a cityscape, but lots of greenery. Maybe that's where that resilience comes in. This is interesting because it looks like I'm almost in this post-apocalyptic world, but trees and nature are still being resilient and shining through. This looks like it could just be a neighborhood in Boston. And then, okay, that's interesting. I want to know, I want to see some of the images you got. So what I want you to do here is if you're in Firefly and you have an image that you like, if you click on it, do you see here where it says share options? What you can do now is you can click that and then you can click copy. And we're going to do other things, but right now we're just going to keep it simple. I want you to copy that image and then I want you to bring it over to Miro. I want to see what you got. And they're probably going to come over and be pretty big. Oh, interesting. So you'll have to resize them. But bring some of those images over. Maybe there were ones that you liked or didn't like. That's interesting. Are those birds? Are those people? Fascinating. We'll look a little bit closer at those. Okay, this one actually has a person. Is that a person covered in grass? Okay. Wow. All right, here we go. I'm seeing some similar themes coming through. A lot of greenery. Good. Keep them coming. If you need to go down a little bit, or we can make some of these images smaller, you can go up. Feel free to go up here too if you need to. Ah, okay. That is interesting. Good. Oh, well, wow, this is much different. All right, David, I would love to hear how you got this image. If you want to share, that's an interesting one. If you don't want to share, that's
Yeah,
okay too.
that's fine, Jenna. I've been trying to like create some sort of general image for like the what my course is all about, the graphic syllabus of my course. And
Yeah.
when I was prompting the text to image generator was to create a building with my course on the top of the roof with each of
Mm.
the floors labeled 1 through 8, like an 8-week course, and then
Oh, I love that.
have skill levels being the elevators, like students could go up and down the elevators.
That
I
is so smart.
I tried doing this with ChatGPT. I got a little bit closer. I'll throw that graphic in there too.
Yeah,
But it took a lot of prompting because
I bet it did.
it just could not label the floors correctly, or there was
Mm-hmm.
always like some sort of like issue related to putting fonts for text on the image itself. That's still kind of struggling with that.
Yeah, this is great. So we're going to talk a little bit more about how these images can relate. And thank you for sharing, David, how these images relate to your specific practice. I'm going to move this down here just for now because I'm going to show you how to actually go into Firefly and edit these images. Generative models aren't very good at text yet. You'll notice that if you're looking for, is this AI generated, a really easy way for now is to look at the text because it has trouble with text. So I'm thinking that the bones of this image are great. I think that we could go in there and edit it using some of Adobe's just built-in editing features. So that is amazing. I love that. Oh, there's another one. Is this from, I'm assuming this one's from ChatGPT. But also like very
Yes, that's
illustrative.
right. Yeah, it took a
The
long time
feeling is very
to.
different.
Yeah, I asked for for that one. I asked for like a computer iconic
Yeah, it's
type
much
of
more
thing.
illustrative. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I guess it depends too on what your course is. This one feels a little um a little more serious to me than something like this does. So I guess it's kind of like maybe the tone that you want to portray too. I love
and
those examples.
and even the like the part under the person's leg sitting in the elevator that was kind of
Yeah,
warped, and
yeah,
I had to edit that with like graphically, just kind of like cut and paste and make that
sure.
look a little bit nicer.
Yeah, that's
But
awesome. Yeah, thank you for sharing. Love that. Okay, let's come back to some of these just kind of generic images that we have um, prompted. So this, again, the prompt was a visual metaphor for community resilience in urban neighborhoods. What are we seeing? What are some themes that arise? Any similarities, any differences? What are we seeing here? Anybody want to share either on the chat or out loud? I'm seeing a lot of the same idea. Urban architecture with greenery overlaid on it somehow. Some are a little more surreal than others. I think this one is for sure. I think this one definitely is. Some of them feel a little more realistic. Some of them feel very goofy. Like, what is this? Is that a mini person? I have absolutely no idea what that is. Um, but it's interesting, right? And maybe this could be a springboard to say, okay, maybe this is how I could visualize or speak about or continue creating and visualizing this idea. Before we go to the next exercise, I just want to quickly show you some of the things that you can do in Firefly if you want to keep refining and customizing your image a little bit. So over here, here's where your settings are, and here's where you get to really get into the weeds and get as precise as you want to. So this is your aspect ratio. You can change, you can say, I want the image to be widescreen or square or portrait. Depending on what your use case is, you would want to be mindful of that. If you're doing something for a tiny column in your syllabus, maybe you want to do something that's a little more vertical. You can also say, I want this to be a photo, or I want this to be art. So if you choose photo, it's going to look photorealistic. But if you use art, it's going to look like a graphic. So just keep that in mind too. We will talk about using specific styles and compositions in a second. So you can actually use your own sketch or a photo that you found as kind of a reference, but we're going to get into that in our next exercise. But I do want to show you quickly down here for styles. So here in your styles tab, this is where you can really experiment and have fun. So here under all, I usually go to all, and that's where I am really doing the different settings and the different styles and techniques of a certain image that I want. And so based on this, I want you to go in here and maybe play around with some of these ideas. Do you want your work to feel more vector based, more graphic based? I think this is really interesting. Doing something like a comic book, I think could be interesting. If depending on your use case, maybe you want it to be something that people could engage with. Maybe it's a younger audience, so maybe you want it to look like a comic book. Maybe. So I'm going to choose comic book, and you'll see here that that's coming up as one of my settings. You could also get specific with technique. Now, remember, if you have a whole bunch of techniques, they're going to all kind of override each other, and you're probably going to end up with something that looks like nothing. But I encourage you to go in here and kind of look at this. One of my favorite things to do is play with the materials. Claymation is awesome. I wonder if I do claymation and comic book together, what that will look like. So with these two things here, I'm going to generate again, and then to generate, all you do is go here. So now for part 2 of this exercise, oh wow, this is feeling very sci-fi, punk, almost like Blade Runner. I love that. Go around and play with some of these different techniques. Okay, that is interesting. I would say this is more claymation than comic book. Oh, how fun is this? I love that. I'm going to take this comic book out because I want to play around with my material. I really like these comic book, or I'm sorry, these claymation examples. I think that's really fun. But I want to know too, what are you playing with? Use the same prompt, but what kind of effects or styles or material are you playing with? Okay, I actually don't like this one. When I took comic out, I don't like this. I don't like seeing the people's hands. This is not feeling right to me. So you know what I could do? This is actually very disturbing to me, this image that I generated. So I'm thinking, nope, I want to go back to this. If I liked this, and maybe okay, this was feeling very good to me. I liked how playful it was. I liked how kind of exciting and engaging it felt. If I go back to this, and all I have to do is click this, if I go up here and I see this edit option, maybe I'll say, I want to see a few more like this. So if I go to this and I say generate similar, then I'm going to get a few more that look like that, or at least I should, if it works as it should. Let's see, maybe it won't. Sometimes this is what we deal with as designers. We think it's going to work, but it doesn't. I'm going to put this on to my board because I think that's so cool. All right, what other ones are you finding? Now, theoretically, that should have worked. When I press generate similar, it should have automatically generated other ones. Firefly is giving me some grief right now. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here to edit, and maybe I'll say I want to use this as a style reference, right? And so I click that, and you see here how now I have a style reference up. So I'm going to say generate similar, and now let's see if it's going to give me something similar. Ooh, how fun is this? Oh, it's like an interconnected. Is this like our future? If we keep scaling, everything's just going to be covered in, is that cords or is that yarn? Hard to tell. Really interesting image though. Provocative, right? It's thought provoking. All right, good. So that did work. So again, just to recap, I went in here, I said, oh, I love that. I pressed edit, and then I said, use the style reference. And then all I did was generate again. And then I got some really awesome things. I am loving how fun these feel. Now listen, is it, super close to my prompt, a visual metaphor for community resilience? Maybe if we all work together as a community, our lives would be more colorful and healthy and happy. I think I can make an argument for that. I really like this one too. This is feeling really fun. I do see some things coming in the chat. Yarn and futuristic. That is what that was. Nature enduring, absolutely. And you'll see here that once you start playing around with some of these different settings and styles, then the images start to feel different, right? It doesn't feel so one-dimensional. Where when we started off, things were feeling the same and kind of boring, right? It was like, so what? But then when you kind of got in there and you prompted a little bit further, then the results started feeling a little more unique. And that's another takeaway from this, is that sometimes I love that. How fun is that? Is that a watercolor? That's beautiful. Sometimes when you're prompting AI, your first answer is rarely going to be your final answer. Sometimes you have to go in there and you have to take a little time to prompt and change the settings to get to where you're going. And this is just a really great example of that. Ooh, oh, how interesting. Anybody want to share what this is? Oh, I absolutely love that. Look how cool. Oh, that's beautiful. I love that. Very cool. Maybe in the chat, if you, what's this say? Does the comic book feature maintain characters who look the same from frame to frame? Great question, David. That is another challenge that you're going to find is that one of the hardest things when you're using Firefly is to get the images, or if you're using people, this is even more challenging to look the same from image to image. When we did this project with that, the Troy option, and the Troy city and Atlantis, some students actually generated people. And while Adobe Firefly isn't great at doing it, one of the ways you can get it to work a little better is if you use an image as a style or composition reference. So if you go into Firefly and you have, let's see, you see here that on your settings option, you can use images as composition reference or style reference. It's probably not going to work great 100% of the time. If you have Photoshop skills, you'd probably rely on those pretty heavily, but that's a pretty good way to at least get you halfway there, I would say. But yeah, that is a challenge, is building that consistency around and uniformity from image to image.
That's nice because sometimes we want to create a storyboard to maybe
Exactly.
eventually make a video out of or something.
Exactly.
Like,
Exactly. Yes, of course. And I will say that Firefly, I'm loving these images. Firefly, there are other image generators that are a little more powerful. Firefly, I would say, probably has a somewhat limited training set that they're using. So the results aren't as robust, but I would say they're a little more ethically minded. So that's why I prefer using Firefly. Look how fun these images are. Look how kind of boring and mundane we went to how exciting and different. These are beautiful. I absolutely love these. All right, I know we're all having fun. I do want to get to the next exercise. I had a place here for a little reflection. So maybe if we want to take a minute or so, we can take some time to reflect on these before we go into our next exercise to really think about what visual themes appear and if there are any assumptions that they reveal. So I would say here, we kind of talked about some of these assumptions, right? Like, or these themes that appeared. I would say maybe kind of like surrealist, nature driven. Somebody said something about nature being enduring, which was kind of maybe that idea of resilience coming through. But are there any assumptions that especially these very first prompts, is there anything that they reveal about the tool themselves, the tool itself, or the data that it's training on? Anybody? You can just share it on the sticky if you want, or you can say it in the chat or say it out loud. What do you think? Are there any assumptions that are being revealed here? David, I absolutely love that. Very Western architecture, right? This looks like an American city. And I think that's great because that reveals a huge assumption that is built into these tools, that a lot of this is formed and trained on this Western idea of knowledge. So I think that's a great assumption that has been revealed and something that you need to keep in mind when you're using these tools. Anything else? Also, kind of like the idea of urban neighborhoods itself. Is this what urban neighborhoods look like? I don't know. We do have some, I guess, a little diversity. I see some human elements here with an arm. But are there assumptions built into, if there are people on here, it might be easier to see about the dominant figures that come up. A lot of hands, right? There are a lot of hands. And I think that's because if you were to go to stock, Adobe stock, let's do an experiment. Let's go to Adobe stock. Every time I do this, their stock price comes up. If we go to Adobe stock and maybe we look up nature city, I'm willing to bet a lot of those pictures will look kind of like this. You know, if you're looking up a picture of generative AI, like if you ask stock photo to find a picture of AI, it's going to have a robot, right? It's going to have like these connecting nodes, right? This is actually terrible. I wonder if I have like the idea of like recycling, going green. Then that's very stereotypically reminds me of kind of like holding a seed in your hand, right? Like look at this guy. So maybe that's why we see so many hands. Look at that. We see hands because like that's kind of built into the data, right? That is like the signifier of being green, right? Stuff like that. Good assumption. Good, biases that we're revealing. All right, good. Yeah, I agree too. There are idealized images of urban spaces. Yeah. Beautiful reflections. I think that is all accurate. Ooh, this is fun. Very cool. All right, are we ready to move on to the next exercise? We have about 24 minutes. And if you have questions, you can ask them along the way. Absolutely. I'm going to check the chat right there. The people are mostly Caucasian, it would seem. Absolutely. Definitely. When, bird's eye view, I'm seeing a few hands and they look Caucasian for sure. All right, let's go down here. We're going to go to our next exercise. It's a little bit similar, but I want to get into some different prompts based on some of the work you're doing. So this again comes from, I'm down here. You see my hands? Ooh, there we go. I love when I'm using Miro in class because I can just see my students slowly migrating over to where my pointer is. There you go. Awesome. Let's see, is there another chat? I might be wrong, but most. That is interesting. I do wonder how the prompts change. If you're using American English or British English, will your prompt come out kind of not suited, but customized maybe to your region? It's a good question. I actually don't know the answer to that. I'm gonna look into that. If you prompt in a different language, will you get results more likely, that are responding to the region you're in? That's a good question. I would love to explore that because I don't know the answer to that right now. But really good thinking. Okay, so this is another quote from that Creative Boom article. Designers are finding AI very useful in creating mood boards. So this is kind of what we've been doing a little bit, but we're going to dive into it a little bit deeper. Before things like Pinterest or AI came along, designers, we use Pinterest, Flickr, and AI is really good at filling in some of those gaps. So kind of like what we've been doing, I want you to think about what's one concept or tension in your field? And I think this is pretty broad that it can apply to your work, no matter if it's research focused, teaching focused, maybe you're on a team, you're a staff member, and maybe you think about your department or your school or your program. What is a concept or a tension that's in your field that you are thinking through right now? So something really big that we're thinking through in graphic design is just like, what does the future of design look like? Will we have jobs? That's a different conversation for maybe a different workshop. I actually feel pretty optimistic about our future as designers, but that's a tension that we're feeling right now. And then based on that tension, I want you to think through again, like we did with this first one, but we're going to use a lot of different prompts right now. How can you help visualize that idea? So one of the things I'm dealing with, like I said, is the future of the graphic design industry. So I think that would be my prompt. What does the future of graphic design look like? So think about attention. Think about something that you're dealing with in your class or in your work or in your field or just in your day-to-day. And then let's go ask Firefly to help us visualize that and bring that to life. So my prompt is, what does the future of graphic design look like? And you don't have to say it as a question. You could say, you know, maybe you have an answer for that, and maybe you want to think through that. So maybe my answer to that is the future of graphic design is still very much human driven. We are just adding new tools that help us expand creativity. Now that's a little long-winded. I could probably say that a little more succinctly, but for now, okay, terrible. What does the future of graphic design look like? Come on, what's this? That does not answer my question whatsoever. So maybe knowing this, I need to use some different prompts. So let's see, I think I want to get a little more specific maybe with how I'm going to imagine this. And if I was doing an exercise in my class that I wanted students to think through, what does the future of graphic design look like? Maybe I would ask them to do something that they could build maybe an ad campaign around. So maybe I have this imagery that they would add some copy to. I don't know, maybe like this glitch graphic is interesting. I'm going to go up here and I'm going to choose art because I think I want it to be art, not photo based. And then, okay, so I like the glitch graphic idea. I'm just going to see where that gets me. So I'm going to generate that. What does the future of graphic design look like? Keep in mind too, if your prompts are short, Firefly might not always give you the best results. Okay, see now this is interesting because now I don't have really anything discernible at all. It's just glitchy, which I actually think is interesting because maybe the future of graphic design is a little bit indiscernible right now. Maybe it's something that we have to work through as designers and in the arts to kind of pave our own way. So in a very abstract conceptual way, I actually really like this. So I think I'm going to maybe use this as the foundation of my work. But I want to know what are some of the challenges you're working through? What are some of the things you're thinking about specifically? And then how can Firefly help us visualize that? As you're thinking through that, if you are anything in the chat, nope. If you are able to look at my screen, I'm going to show you a few more things that you can do in Firefly. These are all pretty similar, but I kind of like this. I like the color. I like that there's kind of like a lot of things going on right here in the center of the image. So it almost is leading my eyes right here. It's almost like a subject. So I'm going to do this. And do you see here where it says edit? No, that's not what I want. Maybe I'm going to bring this into Photoshop. And I'm hoping this will work. Actually, this is what I wanted to do. Do you see here where it says share options? This is what we did earlier. So you could either copy the image. So I'm going to show you a before and after. I'm going to copy this image into Miro so you can see the first. That's what it was to begin. When you click here, you can either open it in Adobe Express or in Photoshop. Now, if you don't even have to be a graphic designer. Even if you're somewhat familiar with design tools, you can go ahead and bring this graphic into Illustrator, or if you're doing type manipulation, I would probably bring it into Illustrator to kind of edit it further. But I'm actually going to open it here in Adobe Express, which Adobe Express is kind of like Canva. Think about it as like a Canva competitor, but it's really great because this is where you can add text. So if you have this image and it's something that you are thinking through, or you want to add it to whatever use case makes sense, here in Adobe Express, if you press text, you can add text here, right? So I'm going to add some text and I'm going to ask that question. What does the future? And I'm going to actually change this because I cannot read this text. So here, instead of source sans, maybe I want to do kind of like a funky source text, almost where it looks like it might be code. I know specifically there is a font called IBM Plex Mono, which I think would be pretty cool to use here. Looks a little sci-fi, right? I'm going to do white. I'm going to make this bigger like this. right? Okay, now keep in mind, this is a little hard to see because the graphic itself is just so busy, but we can get the main idea. What does the future of graphic design look like? Okay. Maybe I want to make it bold. That's interesting. But the point is, I'm very much a perfectionist, so I could spend all day tinkering with this. That's not what we're here for. If you want some graphic design foundational knowledge, I'm happy to walk you through that. But right now, we're just kind of trying to play around with the capabilities that Adobe allows us. And this is something that you could do right from Firefly. So again, when I was in Firefly and I had this image, all I had to do was press share, and then it opened here in Express. And then I have this text, editor that I can edit these images right here. So this is great for a slide. This is great for somebody set a syllabus. Maybe it's a social graphic. Maybe the possibilities are endless. But what I want to show you is that you can do all of this right from Firefly. Text isn't as legible as I would like it to be, but that's okay. And then if you get something that you like here, if you press download, I'm just going to do a JPEG. I'm going to download it, and then it's going to go right to my downloads. And then that's something that I can add here. So have you had any luck? Anybody in the chat? Anybody online? Anybody had any success kind of thinking through what the future of their work looks like, or what a challenge or a tension they've been thinking through? Anybody just having fun experimenting in Firefly, which is, useful in its own way? Instead of glitch, maybe I'm going to do something completely different. I'm going to play around with some material. Wood carving is always a very interesting outcome. Not always practical, but the results are interesting, I would say. If you get some of these images that you're generating, I would love to see them here on the board. Even if you just kind of gone off and done your own thing, that's totally okay. Show me what you're making. I want to see. Okay, like what exactly is this? I asked, what does the future of graphic design look like? And this is what I got. And that makes zero sense to me. So sometimes you do things and you say, that just doesn't make sense. How about layered paper? That could be interesting. Again, my prompt is pretty open-ended. I'm asking Firefly to make a lot of assumptions. So if I wanted to get some more direct results, I might have to get a little more specific with my prompt. This is an interesting one. Okay, I can actually see what prompt to use. What does the future of graphic design look like? Somebody asked that. I love that. This is an interesting thought. Is this what the future of graphic design looks like? Maybe. Let's see. Okay, beautiful. But what this has to do with the future of graphic design is unknown to me. So Firefly has given me some funky things. So I'm thinking maybe I need to get a little more specific with my prompt. So I'm going to say not in all caps, a graphic designer in the year 2050. Let's see what that gives me. Now I'm asking you to visualize a graphic designer. I'm not asking, what does it look like? I'm saying, I want you to tell me, okay, this is absolutely fascinating. So I got a person. Again, we're working straight from Adobe stock. I would not say this looks any different than what a graphic designer is looking like in the year 2025. So maybe I wanted to ask it to speculate a little bit. What if I say a speculative graphic designer in the year 2050? I wonder if that word will make Firefly think a little bit deeper. And we have 10 minutes, so I'm going to wrap up in just a second, but I want to show you just a few other things that you can use. Okay, I mean, I guess that's a little more scientific, but not really. Something else I want to show you too is that if you want to mock something up, Firefly is really great at taking, well, it's pretty good at taking an image and turning it into like a mock-up or a visualization for you. So a lot of times when we're doing work, we're using mock-ups to show our work in realistic settings. That helps us kind of bring our work into real life to say, this is what this poster looks like on a wall, or this is what you know, this packaging looks like in reality. And that's really helpful because that makes our work feel much more realistic. But sometimes we're looking for mock-ups and sometimes they're just not working. We are not finding what we need. So what you can actually do in Firefly is you can use this composition reference, and you'll probably get better results if you use something that you sketched. Now, I just quickly did this in Illustrator, but you can use something that you drew. Doesn't have to be super great. I'm not a good illustrator. I can't draw to save my life, but I can do a quick reference. And then maybe I want to say mock-up of a book sitting on a wooden table I love mid-century modern design. So I'm going to say that. My results might not be great, but I just want to quickly show you two other things and then I'll have a little time for questions. But I'm certainly happy to keep this conversation going. Okay. Okay, let me say book mock-up. Wooden table, mid-century modern style. Let's try again. It's not terrible. You can kind of see my reference imagery in the back. I have that box. I have that. Okay, this isn't, listen, it's not the best thing, but I would say, you know, maybe if I used my composition, I'm going to add up the strength. So maybe it's probably going to be a little funky now. But again, this is something that you'll have to go in there and really play around with to see, to get the results that you want. I'm doing this pretty quickly. And that was not my best sketch, but let's see if I can at least get something. Yeah, do you see here how it just took my sketch and it just, you know, literally put it there? So you'll have to play around with it. But if that's something you're interested in doing, in taking something you're working on and putting it into a photorealistic setting with the right prompting, with the right settings, and with the right sketch, it's something you can actually do pretty nicely. So maybe I'll even say, let me try to drastically change poster mock-up in a museum on a museum wall. Maybe that's what it looks like instead. So again, I'm using that same reference. It's not terrible. It's not terrible. I could definitely go in there and fix it, but it is interesting. So what I could do now is this is something that I could take, I could copy this, I could go into Photoshop and I could try to, you know, add my poster there. I don't want to look through my files right now because they're so messy, but that is something that I could probably easy, you know, it's flat, it would work well. The last thing I want to show you, and then I'll have a few minutes for questions, is that if you find something that you like, but maybe you say, well, what are these posters on the wall? I don't want those. If you go in here to edit, and then if you go into generative fill, you can make changes right here. So you can either add or subtract things. So here I'm going to press subtract and remove. I'm going to go over here and I'm just highlighting this piece of the image that I want to subtract. And then I'm going to say remove because I want that poster to be the only thing that's on this wall. So if you do that, I'm going to think for a second. Ideally, if it worked as we think it should, it's going to remove that. Now it looks like there's a little bit I didn't quite get in there, but that's okay. I'm going to do the same for here. I'm going to remove that. So that's something, again, you can do right in Firefly. You don't have to have Photoshop if you want to make changes to some of the images you're generating. You can either add or remove right in Firefly without even leaving your browser. The last thing I want to show you too is that if you said, okay, well, this is good, but I actually need to see a little bit more. If you go to expand, you can say, okay, I want to expand this a little bit. So maybe I'll go, I want to see a little more of the top and bottom. So then you can press generate. And then again, if it works as you think it should, you'll see more of the top and the bottom. This is really powerful stuff that you can do right from Firefly. You don't need Photoshop. You don't need, you don't need to know how to Photoshop to expand and edit these objects, which is great because that makes design and, this easy access to editing more available. And then once you're done, you can just download. You can say keep, and you can download it. All right, I'm back here. Ooh, what will faculty development? Okay, are we all just going to be replaced by giant robots? It could be. We've seen a lot of robots here. All right, we have about 4 to 5 minutes left. I am going to open up my chat. Let's see, what do we have here? This provides option for more edits compared to Canva graphic design. The AI tools are very powerful. Absolutely. Listen, I use Canva. I will never, ever disparage Canva, but Adobe was made for design. So I think Adobe definitely has more powerful options for design built in. If you have other questions, feel free to ask. The last things I want to show you, I have a few takeaways here, but then I have this resources document. My colleague and I have been doing a lot of research on generative AI and what that looks like in practice. So we just have this giant spreadsheet that we've been curating, and I share that every time I talk or do a workshop. So this is incredible resources if you want to share, learn, read more about AI. Of course, CITL has these amazing solutions here and these hubs that you can access. Firefly, Adobe just had this live video today I saw on LinkedIn about using Firefly in Photoshop. And this is a link to my website if you want to reach out. Any questions or thoughts in the last 2 minutes? I know that's not a lot of time, but if you have questions, I'd be happy to answer them either now or individually. There is a question. If someone wants to watch this again, will it be available to rewatch?
Yes.
Cool. So if they signed up, will they get an email?
And so videos will be, well, this recording will be posted on Media Space, and
Okay.
you'll be able to see the recordings if you sign up for our newsletter, our
Amazing.
Gen AI newsletter with CITL.
Awesome.
And we will provide recaps and updates on that end.
Awesome. Cool. And I'll keep this Miro board live so you all can go in there and keep practicing as well. But again, I'm happy to answer emails if you have questions or if you want to just connect outside of this, I would love to.
And thank you so much, Jenna, for presenting. And this was truly amazing. I'm a creative myself, so
Good.
Canva is my go-to, but Adobe Firefly could give extra elements to that. So thank you again, Jenna.
Definitely. Of course. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.